Let's go! What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. I am also the owner of the Off the Ball Network, and on today's show, we got a good one. We're going to dive into the NBA early season, some overreactions, some underreactions, some surprises, and all that. And I got a great cast of guys joining me and we'll have some guys trickling in and out of the show. But let me introduce my panel first. He's coming in a little rough today. He wound up waking up and doing this. So we always appreciate when our fellow Canadian gets up and talks ball with us. Ken, what's going on, man?
Saying that you have a good cast when I'm here, I don't really agree with that. I can't party like I used to, and it's a very sobering moment today as I reflect and drink water and take Advil and do all the necessary things in order to be here. But I told Chris I'd be here today, so I'm here. Appreciate you having me on.
Yep. Always glad to have our fellow Canadian north of the border with us. All right, our brother from the Hoopers, John W. Happy birthday, by the way. His birthday was yesterday. I know you celebrated in style. So what's going on, my brother?
Oh, good. Appreciate you for having. Thank you for all the birthday from the whole ball network. Everybody else birthday week. I appreciate it. President, it's the only president of Chris LeBron. No LeBron.
And first time, happy. I've been on his show a few times. We've interacted a bunch of times. So happy he came on this early morning to chop with us. My guy Craig, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on, Chris? Thank you for having me on. It's a lot of fun. Chopped it up a little bit with Ken on the Competitive Hedge podcast. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, happy to be here. Talk some ball this morning.
Yes, and that's what we're going to do. And let's get right into it. Obviously, we are early in the NBA season, and but there's a lot of things to talk about so far. A lot of good, and obviously there's a lot of other stuff going on that's non-basketball related. But we ain't gonna get into all that stuff. Let's get into the ball and all that. So let's dive right into it. Obviously, a lot of people. I'm gonna go in first with the Bucks. Obviously, we most of us were probably like they're going to be in the top of the East and all that. And they're kind of flying under the radar, which is kind of wild for a team that's now 8-0 and just playing great on both sides of the ball with Chris Middleton not even playing, which is kind of crazy. So are we surprised that the Bucks are this good? It's like I said, not surprising that they're on top of the East, but like they haven't lost a game and they're playing just absolutely out of their mind on both sides of the ball without Chris Middleton. Like there's no true Drew Holiday's playing great, obviously, and they have him. And Giannis is back maybe in that MVP discussion again. We had some Giannis fatigue, but Craig, you go first. Are we surprised with the Bucks, early season dominance?
I don't think so. That was one of the teams I think were the favorites coming in, but I think a big surprise from their perspective is last season they gave up over 40 3-point attempts per game, and now this year they've dropped that. They're allowing just 30. And as far as like defensively, we kind of know what they're about, but I think the way they've been doing that and making it an point of emphasis this year, they've allowed just 101 points per 100% per 100 possessions this early in the year. If they're playing defense like this, and they're without Chris Middleton and they're 8-0 early in the season, Drew Holiday has been he's been great. This past week, his shooting splits have been 51, 45, and 81. Like if he's playing like that, helping out Giannis and company, they're going to be a really, really tough team to beat in the East.
Yeah. Ken, how are you feeling about the Bucks so far?
I mean, I'm shocked that they're undefeated, given how many tough opponents they've already had out of the gate. The fact that they don't have Middleton is a big reason why I'm surprised, because I think if he's there and they're 8-0, then I'm like, oh, okay, that's just a big three getting back to what they're doing. But they're doing two things really well. They're rebounding really well. They're the best team in the league in rebounding, and they're the best defensive team because they haven't been anything special offensively. That's not to say that they're a bad offensive team. They're just they're just doing what you have to do. When you're number one in rebounding and defense, then you're going to win a lot of basketball games. So they're committing to that side of the ball, and we're starting to see why the Bucks won it a couple years ago. Had they had Middleton last year, maybe we were talking about them going back to back. So I think that for me, they're always the favorites for me coming out of the East if they have all three of them there, and I stand by that this year as well.
John.
Am I surprised that the Milwaukee Bucks are on it at 8? I'm not surprised. I'm surprised the contribution of players like this.
You're breaking up still, bro. You're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit. Yeah. You're coming in and out. Yeah, you're still breaking up.
Hear me now?
We want to get your perfect analysis, so we want you.
Right.
Let's see.
Right.
I think you should. Let's see.
No one wants to hear Canadian give basketball input. We gotta do Jesus.
Let's see how you're talking now.
Good.
Let's see.
Let me know.
I think you're good. I think you.
So, if y'all do properly, I'm not surprised. Bucks are 8-0.
Yeah, you're still breaking up, bro. Still breaking up.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we're still breaking up.
I'm gonna be back. Let me see.
Yeah, take your time. But yeah, Craig, like it's really impressive, like what they've done. Like they're not like Giannis is being Giannis. Like we're gonna get that Giannis, regardless, right? And Drew has stepped up that scoring. He's had some big scoring games and all that, but like they're doing it on the defensive end. They're just dominating. I mean, I watched the game. Obviously, me being a Knicks fan, I watched that game, and it's like they just took over, especially on the perimeter and all that. Just kind of locked up. And on everyone. Like Brunson didn't look like the same, and they just the rebounding. They're just everywhere. They're just nowhere there. And it's just, I think, like especially with Giannis, we had the Giannis fatigue. Like it's a real thing. Like we get Giannis fatigue, and we're just like. And then you just look at his stats alone, and you're just like, whoa. Like he's putting up he's putting up MVP stats. He's averaging 33, 11, 13 rebounds, 6 assists. Like, improve. I know the 3-point percentage is not there yet, but we're not really looking for that with Giannis. But it's just really impressive what they've done so far, and it's just they're the most underappreciated 8-0 team in NBA history, just because obviously there's so much going on in the league, that we're forgetting, that they're off to a tremendous start without Chris Middleton. So it's been really, really impressive.
But that being said, on Middleton not being there, a big reason also why they are so much better this year is they are a completely different team when they have Brook Lopez. Yeah. Because Lopez played 15 games last year, maybe. He was out for the majority of the season, and now you throw him into this season, and it's like, man, they are so good when he's out there. And I think that's why they're so good on the rebounding side of things as well, because when they don't have him out there, then they're just relying on Giannis to do everything on the boards. And they don't have to do that when they've got Lopez out there. Yeah. And he can stretch the floor, hit the threes. Like, I just think he's a perfect 5 to play alongside Giannis's 4.
Yeah, he only played 13 games last year, and that showed a lot. A lot of it. They needed Giannis to do a lot, and that's why he kind of at the end worn down. But now having Brook
in the playoffs,
yeah, he did. He had to put his team on his back, and now having Brook there, it's it helps a lot in the interior. Because Brook stretching, and isn't it crazy with Brook Lopez? Like, if you look at his Jersey days, he never shot the 3. Like, if you look at the shooting numbers and like the trajectory, and that's shout out to him for like improving his game and knowing that like if I continue just playing the way I am, I'm going to be out the league because his style back to the basket. We've seen those type of players; they're not in the league. They don't last long, and he could have easily been out of the league, 4 or 5 years ago, and he just improved on his 3-point shooting, and he's now, now he's a good 3-point shooter, and that just helps them so much. So the Bucks are off to let's see, we're gonna wait for John to get, but another team that added a tremendous player and is off to absolutely terrific, scorching, start to the season is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're off to a good starts to say the least. And obviously they added Donovan Mitchell in the offseason. On top, last year they had a breakout season, made it to the play-in, and they went out and just went all in. They went all in, and I always appreciate when teams go all in and try to go for it, even if it might not be ideal fit. Though they'll make it work, and so far they have in this early season, and they drafted really well. Cleveland, they finally have done it right without LeBron James. Cleveland sports finally got it right. And it seems like the Donovan Mitchell fit has been absolutely flawless so far. Him and Garland, that's one of the best backcourts in the league. With Mobley, Kevin Love's a 6 man of the year type of player. So, do we buy that the Cavaliers can continue this, great start and potentially be, one of the beasts in the East with Celtics and the Bucks? Do we believe that, Ken?
I mean, first of all, I feel bad for Craig because he's a Pistons fan, and within this division, he's got to deal with Milwaukee and Cleveland right now, the way that they're playing. I know that they're still a couple of years away, and they're a good young team, but still, just had to point that out. I think that this is a really good Cavs team that they kind of remind me of the Raptors, but they have more star power. Is what I would say, because they have so much length on this team. And they defend so well. They're second in defensive rating. They're seventh in offensive rating. So they shoot the three really efficiently too. They have some knockdown 3-point shooters. So in today's league, when you're hitting threes consistently and you're also playing great defense, that's a lethal combo. So I think Cleveland has the potential to stay in that top four all throughout the season. Once we get to the playoffs, they just have to stay healthy. Obviously, we saw that Garland missed a couple games early on when he picked up an injury. But if you have those two healthy all season, along with that front court, I don't see any reason why this isn't a top four team. When you start looking at the rest of the Eastern Conference with all the craziness that's happening, in Brooklyn and other places, I just think that this is...
Wait, there's stuff going on in Brooklyn? I didn't know that.
Well, I was more focused on watching Lauri Markkanen highlights, so I haven't really been keeping up with it.
Yeah, I've been just worried about Lauri Markkanen. I didn't know there was stuff going on in Brooklyn.
I didn't know that there was.
That's news to me, man.
So I assume there was something wrong.
Ken, that's news to me. I didn't know anything going on in Brooklyn.
When I look at the rest of the East, I'm like, I don't trust any of these teams outside of maybe Boston to actually to pass the Cavs in the standings.
Yeah.
I just don't see it from the Hawks or the Raptors, or especially not the Knicks. So I just don't know.
It's too early for this. It's too early for that.
Well, no, the reason why is because I have the standings pulled up and they were right behind the Raptors there. So if anything, you're the 6th seed right now. So congrats on that. But
Ken, we beat the crap out of teams with injuries and all their players out. Give us some respect now. Come on. Even though we barely beat them, come on, Ken.
You guys absolutely beat down a James Harden-less Sixers by 2 points.
So and Joel Embiid. And no Joel Embiid. But hey, it's a win's a win. This isn't the BCS. This isn't college football. Win's a win. Not a pretty win, but hey, you take it. You definitely take it.
but that's where I look at the rest of this conference and I'm like, I think Cleveland, they might even be a top 2 team in the East this year. I don't think that's out of the question. So
no, not at all. And I remember having this conversation with Francis on his show, and he was very bullish on Cleveland and thinking that they're a top 3 seed. And I'm high on it. I was like, top 3 seed? I mean, I wouldn't, if everything goes right. I could definitely see that, but and then he kind of got me going. I'm like, okay, Mobley, Allen, their benches, Levert, if Levert's come off the bench, but Levert's been starting and playing good. I was like, oh my God, I think I'm starting to like them. And then in my prediction show, I said, I think they're Eastern Conference Finals bound. And we got our guy Nick. What up, Nick?
What's going on, y'all? How y'all feeling?
What's going on? We good. We're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers right now and their hot start. They're 7-1, playing absolutely great. Obviously, the addition of Donovan Mitchell was a big move and a big step forward for the franchise that's kind of been trying to find their ways ever, when LeBron's left 2 times, it kind of seems like they just dip, but it seems like they hit the draft, which is the most important thing. Like, you have to hit your draft picks. Like, and I talk about that you guys know I talk that religiously. Like, if you miss your draft picks, it will come back to haunt you. That's what my team's going through. We keep missing draft picks, and it's kind of why we're kind of in flux. And Cleveland hit on draft picks big time. So for Nick, do you buy the Cavaliers, being, one of the, the beast in the East, a potential maybe Eastern Conference Finals, type of team?
I do, honestly. I'll say this though, like I already predicted that Cleveland was going to be at least in the East Conference. When you look at the option, there is Garland.
You're breaking up a little bit, Nick. You're breaking up. What's up with you and the Hoopers and your internet connection?
We're having
What's
audio
going on?
issues this morning.
What's up with the connection down south? What's going on?
I was wondering if it was just me.
I think you should be good now.
So good.
I think you should be good.
Okay. And is that season began? I have Cleveland. That's going to hear me.
You're good.
It's really choppy.
Yeah.
I'll even come back. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. We got to get our guys down south.
I think one of the biggest things for the Cavaliers is look at some of the wins that they've had already this year. They beat Boston twice already both in overtime, but still, if you're a team that's trying to make a push for the top of the East, that's a huge confidence boost to not only beat them twice, but one of them was on the road, and for them to be able to have that confidence going in, like, okay, yeah, Boston's not that bad. We can take them down. Yeah. I think that's huge. And I was looking up some of their stats too. They actually have the second best points allowed in the NBA behind the Milwaukee Bucks, who we were just talking about. And they have the second highest point differential of any team in the NBA. So not only are they shooting threes and making threes at a high clip, they're also playing solid defense. And that's showing up big early in this season. And I know we had talked in our chats early preseason about, where the Cavs going to fall. And I know they've really kind of surprised me, and I figured they'd be a playoff team, but I didn't think they'd be this good this quickly. The fact that they've kind of done that is surprising, but yeah, I don't think it's out of the question that they're a top 3, top 4 team in the East right now, especially the way that they're playing so early in the season, beating some good teams.
Yeah, like you said, they beat Boston twice in overtime, and their only loss is opening night, on the road against Toronto by 3. So like they can easily be undefeated.
They're about to go through a really tough stretch too. Like the next couple games, I mean, you play both LA teams, so unless Kawhi's playing, then you're probably not that worried about either of them. But once you start getting into like Warriors, T-Wolves, Bucks, Heat, Hawks, like this is where we're going to find out how good they really are. Because yes, the Boston wins are good, but like they're also playing a lot of weak teams early on. So I'm not saying that they're not going to beat some of these more quality teams because we've seen them beat Boston, but this is where we're going to find out a lot over the next couple weeks of, okay, is this Cleveland team a legit top 3 team in the East? Or are they going to kind of take that step back, be in that 4 to 6 range where I think a lot of people maybe had them coming into the year?
Yeah, for sure. They got a couple tough games. Like I said, both LA, they got a West Coast swing that they have. I think both LA teams, Golden State, and I think Mini, even though some of those teams have been disappointing, still a tough stretch going out West. So that will show a lot about this casting, but they're good. I mean, they're good. Donovan Mitchell is, everything they expected. I know a lot of people were kind of wondering how that fit was, especially, having a smaller backcourt, but I was one that was like, they may have a small backcourt, but they got 2 monsters back there, protecting. in Allen and Mobley. And Mobley hasn't even like taken that next step offensively yet. They haven't needed him to do that. So that's, but there's a game that he could possibly take over. Like, and so once he unlocks, it's going to be scary for this team. Like,
Yeah.
and it just shows like, how, Kevin Love's embraced that off the bench role. Levert has had, I think, the last one against Boston, I think he had 41. So they have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of weapons. So they're looking good right now. They're on both ends of on both sides of the on the court. They're playing really good, and so far great start. And so far the Donovan Mitchell stuff, look, because he's taking over games, and that's what you want, right? You want that guy to take over, and he's been able to do that. He's looked like an MVP candidate so far. I know it's early, but he's looked absolutely tremendous. And it's
and all three of those guys, Levert, Mitchell, Love, all shooting over 40%. And Donovan Mitchell shot almost 73s and still shooting over 40% right now. So early season, Ken, you mentioned it. 3-point shooting's been huge for them, especially for those three.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm glad that the team finally embraced Jared Allen. I was so sick of it felt like everyone kept giving up on him. And I'm like, why? This guy is so good and so young. But they throw him in like he's some role player. And he was an all-star last year. And even out of the gate, he's 13-11 for this team. Like what he brings to the table with rim protection as well. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the entire league.
And that team in Brooklyn could sure use a guy like that.
Wow, it's weird, right?
Yeah, they could certainly use. I mean, they could use a lot of things, but they could definitely use a guy who can, protect the rim because they have no one back there. And it just shows. I mean, I know they didn't want to trade Jared Allen, the Nets, but when you get James Harden, you kind of have to give up a lot of your big pieces, and it's showing, that they can't protect no one. Everyone just gets to the basket whenever they want there. So, and it shows like his development is like he was an all-star last year. He was an all-star, and people we kind of work when they had marketing last year. Our boy, people were trying to figure out, well, is that those three big guys going to work? And they made it work. And they made it work, and one of flipping marketing to get Donovan Mitchell, and it's worked for both teams. It's worked for both teams. So, good things happening in Cleveland right now, and like I said, they finally got it right. They finally got it right without LeBron. It's been kind of a struggle with, trying to figure it out without him, but they finally definitely hit it right in Cleveland and looking good so far. I want to talk about some of the, teams in the middle of the East and some disappointing teams. Like I had Philly, and I don't know, I might have to go back on this. I have Philly going to the finals, guys. I had Philly going to the finals. Kind of like regretting that right now. Obviously, James Harden is out for a month, and Embiid's missed some games, and they're like 4-6 right now. They lost to the Knicks last night. Just give me your guys' feelings around Philly, because obviously it's been a rough start to the season. We all have our Doc Rivers questions sometimes with his rotations and all that. Like, it's kind of just like, what are you doing? I think he hates Matisse Thybulle because he plays defense, and that's exactly what they need. Defense. So, like, that situation's kind of weird. So just give me your assessments on Philly right now, because it seems like I thought this was the year that they would finally figure it out. It's early. It's still early, and they can figure it out if once James gets healthy and Embiid and all that. But it just seems like it's a mess there right now. So just give me your thoughts right now on the Philadelphia 76ers. Craig, you go.
I think it's like you said, it's still early. They had a couple of really tough losses to start the year. You start 0-3, especially losing to a team like San Antonio, who's been kind of surprising. But I think you got to figure out, is Doc Rivers really the guy that you think is going to put this team together? And I think that's a big question mark right now. Is there's just been some questionable stuff, and James Harden, I think he's probably looked the best that he's looked in a long time in Philly. My knock on I would say Joel Embiid's got to kind of have a little bit of a reform his identity, because I know he's trying to make sure that he stays healthy. But from when I watch him, like, his game to me is he's turning into just, I'm going to pick and pop and just stand at 3, even though he's just such a big body.
It just frustrates me so much.
It's so frustrating. It's like, no. You are one of the most, when you're healthy, one of the most dominant and athletic big men that we've seen in a long time. And you just want to stand out at 3 and pick and pop and shoot threes. He could be like all NBA type player consistently. Like
MVP.
Yeah,
MVP.
he could be in that conversation, but I don't know if it's a coach that needs to get into his ear or what, but he's got to mix it up, because the way he's been playing and just kind of hanging out at the 3-point line, that it's great if you're making threes, but if you're not, people would literally just sag off and just let you shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their offense is just kind of hasn't been that great. They're one of the bottom offenses, and like they're there with Miami and Detroit, bottom of the East as far as scoring and all that. So it's kind of been like an identity crisis with them. Like, what do they want to be? And like you said, like we talked about Karl Anthony Towns before we got on. The same thing with Joel. Mm-hmm. My man, you are 7 foot, 280 pounds. Like sometimes when he just stands at the 3, I want to throw something at the TV. Like, you are the biggest man on the court. I understand this new era of you want to shoot threes and all that, and that's cool. And he can shoot it. That's no denying it, but get down low and let people know that you are the most dominant big man in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Like Craig, you said, he's one of the best big men we've seen in a long time. 7 foot 280, skilled, like one of the most skilled big men we've ever seen. And yet he just wants to sag at the 3-point line at times and just shoot threes, and as if he's, a guard. Like, it's just it's frustrating, and I just don't understand this team. Like, they have guys who can score, with Tobias Harris, they have Maxey, James when he's there. They have and it's just like this offense is just like, Bob, you're one of the worst offensive teams in the East. Like, it shouldn't be the case, but it's just like I just don't get. Is it what Doc's doing? I don't get what he's doing. And he's had these issues for a while. Like the Cleveland in LA and in Boston, like he's had these weird, rotation issues and all that. And if he doesn't like you, he doesn't like you. You will sit on the bench if he does not like you. And it just, I don't get it. Ken, I don't know. What are you seeing with Philly right now that just doesn't make sense right now for you?
Well, I mean, they're in the bottom half of the league in assists per game, despite having James Harden, who yes, now he's out for a month, but like we're talking about numbers of him being there. And it kind of feels like their offense is so clunky because they're just waiting for one of their big 3 or Tobias to go and get a bucket. And that's not how you should be running your team. Also, what indication is there that Doc Rivers is still a good coach? I'm just gonna say it.
That ship has sailed, man.
Are we gonna keep banking on his 2007 title as to why he's a good coach when the rest of the league didn't have a big 3?
That has bought him. Finally gonna have that has bought him a lot of time
managing personalities.
Yeah,
he's terrible at managing personalities. Look at what happened with the Clippers with Blake and Chris Paul. Look at what happened, with this Philly team. Like it. Embiid and Harden never look like they're on the same page. It's always like either Embiid goes for like 35 and 10 or Harden goes for 30, 10 and 10. Like they never play cohesively together. Yes, part of it's on Joel. Like, why do you need to stand at the 3-point line all day long? Like, I wasn't as high on Philly as you were, Chris. Like, I wasn't saying that they were going to the finals, but I thought that this was the year for them after they went. They added Melton, they added PJ, because that's kind of been the issue for them is that they had no bench the last number of years. So once you get into one guy's in foul trouble, suddenly you have no offense. So I thought this was the year that they would finally figure it out because they have more guys. And Maxey's having a phenomenal season. Like, he's probably in the most improved discussion because especially now that Harden's out, he's got Eastern Conference like all-star potential. He's averaging almost 25 a game right now.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't get you into the all-star game, I don't know what does. But
Yeah, and that's the question. That's the question that I want to ask Philadelphia now is you're without James Harden for a month. How are you going to cope? How are you going to make your offense run? Are you going to kind of let Tyrese Maxey kind of take over that role? Cuz now if you got to expect that at some point Harden, Embiid, those guys are probably not going to play a full season, especially like if he's depending on what the foot issue is with Harden, that might be a lingering issue for later in the year.
Mhm.
Those feet injuries are no joke.
No.
So now if you're Philadelphia, your offense was predicated on letting Harden or Embiid kind of go to work and do their thing, and everybody else kind of stands around. Now with Harden being out for a month, you kind of have to readjust your whole game plan if you're Doc Rivers. So now, how do you do that? Who do you go through? I think that's going to be an indicator for the rest of the season. It's going to be like a microcosm of it because come crunch time, if say for instance Harden still weren't dealing with a foot issue and they sneak into the playoffs, what are you going to do? Are you going to still try to have Harden? We've seen what he does, or I should say, doesn't do in the playoffs.
Mhm.
So how are you going to rebuild your offense kind of on the fly? And that's what I would be looking at over this next month in Philadelphia.
Like we're talking about them being in the bottom half of assists, and then you just lost a guy that's averaging 10 assists a game.
Yeah.
So someone has to step up and distribute. Like we're talking about Maxey, who's a score first guy. Embiid is a score first guy. Tobias is a score first guy. So someone has to step up and distribute here. And I think we're going to learn a lot about Maxey long term over this next month of like, okay, is he just going to be a scorer? Is he going to be a guy that can prove that like he can be a true point guard in a sense, because he is a pretty undersized shooting guard and they're kind of just playing him there because they have James playing point.
By
So,
default, yeah.
but let's see, like can Maxey put the offense on his back and like not do it just himself, but like get Melton involved, get PJ Tucker shooting some threes, get Montrezl Harrell off the bench going. Like they need these other guys to step up because yeah, Embiid and Maxey could go out and score 55, 60 points together, but then where are you getting the rest of it from? Because Tobias will give you 15 to 20, and then you need other guys to step up. So this is going to be like a gut check time, I think, for Philly this next month. Let's see what these additions are going to look like. And then you can fit Harden into the fold when he comes back. Yeah, he might have the lingering foot issue, but even if he's just that distributor where he's getting the other guys going as well, then I think they'll be okay. But I just don't think they have the head coach there to get that done.
Yeah, and that could be an issue, and just finding that playmaker because you need Maxey because you saw it in the game yesterday against the Knicks. Like he just felt like he had to do so much, take the scoring load, and he shot the ball like 30 times yesterday. Like every time he had the ball, he was shooting that thing. But Tobias, I think, had 20, but took like 13 or 14 shots. Melton was taking over the point guard reins, but he shot the ball terribly. So they need him to have his scoring, be more efficient. I think he was like 4 of 18, had like 9 assists or whatever, but he's going to step up. So they're going to look a little different. They're going to look very different without Joel. And I don't know when Joel's coming back, but obviously with James not there, but that's
3 players combined for 62 shot attempts last night. And that's without Joel Embiid.
That's absurd. Maxey, it felt like every time Maxey had the ball, he was shooting that thing. And it was, and Melton had some shots that were just like, oh my! Like
4 of 18 for Melton, 10 of 29 for Maxey, and then Tobias with an efficient 9 of 15.
He needs to be more
Your other 2 starters had 11 shot attempts, that being Harrell and PJ Tucker. There's no distributing going on at all with this team last night.
PJ Tucker, I'm sorry, we may have to put him at the back of the, put him in the shed. Tell him look at the flowers, and just might have to because he. I guess he's a rah-rah guy.
Players. You talked about Doc hating players. How is Thibault only play 17 minutes when you don't have Embiid or Harden? 17 minutes for Thibault? Come on.
But that's been the issue with him and Thibault, and I've asked people like, what's going on with that? That seems very odd. That situation, and some people have said contract things or just issues with. To me, that seems like like a coaching thing. That's a pure coaching
It has
thing.
to be a
Like,
coaching thing. There's no way that he
that's
should only be playing that amount of time.
no, it doesn't. And when you could use a guy like that, especially with Harden now, that's a very, very odd stuff going on
Paul
with
Reed and
Thibault all
Shane
that.
Milton played more minutes last night than Matisse Thybulle.
Yeah, and I guess he's not an offensive threat. I get that, but he still can provide you. He could slash and get to the bucket a little bit, and obviously give you good defense and all that. But I don't know. I felt like they could definitely use him, but it's definitely.
This is more so just me ranting about how much I hate Doc Rivers, and I've hated him for years, and I don't think I'll ever get over it.
If let's say Philly, they get bounced in round one. Let's say that happens, and they lose in 4 or 5 games. Do you have to be like, hey, this isn't working? We just lost in the first round. You're not going to fire Harden. You're not going to fire Embiid, obviously. Do they have to be like, okay, we need a change. We got to have a change at the helm because, we've had really good teams that maybe should have been to the finals and we have underachieved. Do they have to just be like, hey, Doc, we got to look somewhere else, man. We need a new face. We need a new leader. And maybe they're tuning him out. I don't know, but it just seems like it's just not working with Doc. And if they get bounced early in the playoffs, first round, I mean, change might have to happen.
I think it has to. Like, you're paying Embiid and Harden what you're paying them to be first round out.
Yeah, and if you look at their contract situation, Embiid's locked up for at least 5 more years. Harden's for at least another year after this. PJ Tucker 3 more years. Tobias Harris is a free agent in 2024-25. So the easiest thing for them to do is to make a change at coach and not, otherwise you're going to have to gut this team and try to trade everybody away, which then at that point you're trying to have another team hopefully see more value in some of these guys than, because if teams
and who do they really value on this team in a trade?
Right.
You can't value Tobias that much with how much he gets paid.
No.
You're not going to trade for PJ Tucker, who only really plays defense. Well, but if you're going to give up your one good asset.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're Philadelphia, you tear it down. Maxi's probably one of the guys that you definitely keep, and then everybody else you probably have to.
People will think it's crazy, but I think Maxi's the only real asset that they have. I'm not even including Joel and Harden in there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Everybody wanted him.
Everyone
Brooklyn wanted him.
For Joel has to know he's only going to play 60 games, and everyone who wants to trade for James realizes that he's kind of just about himself. He's not a
he's
very
very ball dominant, that's for sure.
And you'd have to have the perfect situation for it to work.
His $40 million.
Yeah. So that's why I think Maxi's the only one. And you're really going to trade away Maxi? If he's going to have potentially a 25 point per game season at 22? Is that how old Maxi is?
22.
Yeah, he's 22. Yep. Yeah, he just turned 22. So
to me, he's the future of Philly, and they just have to realize that. And I think it starts with the coach, as you guys said, because why are you trading away guys that you're probably not getting a lot back for?
Exactly. And we saw with the trade with James, Brooklyn wanted Maxi bad, and they were like, no, not happening. So, are there any other surprises out east before we head to the west? Any surprises, good or bad, team wise, player wise, that you guys have that have surprised you so far this season?
No, I'll just use this time to say I think Dwayne Casey's way past time to go in Detroit.
Craig, I told you. Craig, I've been telling you, man. I've been telling you that he's the problem.
Dwayne. I really like Dwayne, but I agree.
I do. I do too. I liked him as a coach. He can't. There was one night where he staggered Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, and everybody was like, "Oh, is Dwayne Casey did he kind of figure it out?" And Dwayne after the game goes, "No, Jaden Ivey was just kind of sick, so we didn't really plan that." Oh my god! You don't know your own rotation. And the other thing, and then I'll stop. Killian Hayes, G League, got to go to G League. I feel so bad.
I got that wrong, man. I got that wrong.
He's been so bad. Every night his box score is 1 for 6, 1 for 8. His confidence is tanking with every game. they've got to try to find a way to like just send him to G League. It's not going to hurt this team. They're still rebuilding. They're still a couple years out.
Just get him good minutes.
Try to
and get his confidence back. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the answer is right now. It's just we just got to sit through this and hopefully we can get Victor.
And that's another thing I want to talk about because that's going to be huge as far as the Victor suite. But you're right. I told you, Craig. Casey is. I think they need a new. I just didn't think he fits with this young team, at all. And the Killian stuff hurts because I had him really high. And they don't play defense. And he's supposed to. And Killian was supposed to at least be a good defender and all that. And he's let his offense. His offense hurt his defense because his defense was supposed to at least be there. Like no matter what happens, the offense was always going to be something that I knew okay, that's going to take some time, but the defense will be there from the jump. And it just seems like it's been too on and off with the defense. And then when you're being really bad on offense, that's just a recipe for disaster. And that's going to kill your confidence. And that's exactly what's happened so far with Killian.
The one team I want to give a little bit of love to, only because they're so competitive, and I love to see it as the Pacers.
Yeah, they're going to be good.
I'm happy for Indiana just in general that, Mathurin looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
Probably second in Rookie of the Year behind Paolo.
Yeah, so far, yeah.
Halliburton's getting to do his thing because I love Halliburton. I think he's phenomenal.
I still can't believe Sacramento just let him go. I just don't get that at all. And
but to trade for Sabonis to do what?
But it's Sacramento. You're right. It's
right.
It doesn't make sense.
You traded for Sabonis to be what, the 13 seed in the West, maybe 12.
And Sabonis is a really good player. Really good player.
He is good,
but
that's a lateral move. Except one guy is in his 30s almost, and one guy is that young and talented.
Still question because Indiana might get themselves a most improved and maybe an all-star this year because he's isn't that good. So it's just Indiana's on the right path, and then definitely on the right path. They got.
They're not going to win enough games to really do a lot, but the fact that they're 4-5, they've competed in a lot of their games. That's what you want to see. I would rather look if you're not going to win a lot of games, at least compete. Because there's nothing more frustrating than when you're on a bad team and you look and it's we lost by 40 last night. The game before we lost by 18, but the game before we lost by 15.
They're competing.
Indiana, it's good to see.
They're competing and playing good right now. So those are definitely some surprises.
Don't win too many games because we talked about Victor.
Yeah,
we might see Mathurin start playing 10 minutes a game down the stretch. So
we get when we see the D. Oh yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about, a little bit. But let's head out west and let's talk about some of our surprises out west. And I want to go with the team that, the defending champions. They're off to a tough start, right now. Golden State and last game they literally all you saw was Woj just said, this guy's not playing, this guy's not playing, this guy's not playing, this guy. It's it felt like they were tank mode in Golden State. It was kind of weird, but they're off to a rough start right now in Golden State. And, do we trust that they'll figure it out in Golden State because they just have the pedigree, they obviously have Steph, Clay, and all that. And there's rumors Clay might not play any back-to-backs for the rest of the season. Do we buy that they'll figure it out? I mean, they had their stuff this offseason, everything going on with Draymond and Poole and all that. But Jordan Poole hasn't really played that great, this season so far. So do we buy that the Golden State Warriors are going to figure it out?
I think what they have to figure out first is how are they gonna run their offense. Steph Curry can't play the entire game.
No.
One of the interesting stats that I saw was when Steph Curry's on the court, the Warriors' offensive rating is 118.4. But when he's off the court, it's 92.5.
Mm-hmm.
When he's off the court, it's not good. So I
defense
think that's
and he's not a good defender, and their defense gets worse.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the first thing they got to figure out is when Steph Curry's not on the floor, how are you where does that second unit's identity come from? maybe that's a Jordan Poole thing. I don't know. You mentioned he hasn't really been playing well to start the year. They have a few question marks. There's a few cracks in the armor, I think, but it's a long season, and I think they can figure it out. They're just going through a tough stretch right now. But yeah, I think they'll be okay.
They don't stop anyone though. They don't stop anyone.
Yeah.
They have the worst
I
defense
mean,
in the league.
when you lose to the Pistons, who don't stop anybody either, that's okay. That's reality check time.
They have some bad losses too.
They do.
Like, they have some bad losses. Orlando, Detroit, Charlotte in overtime. Like they have some bad losses because they can't stop any. When you can't stop Dennis Smith Jr., there's a problem. Like
So
it's a problem.
They've had a 5-game road trip. They lost to Charlotte in OT. They gave up 128 to Detroit, 116 to Miami, 130 to Orlando when they were up by 20 at halftime.
Yeah, they were big, yeah.
And then just New Orleans last night, they gave up 114.
Yeah, it's
been a
it's
rough
kind of
road trip.
it's been rough.
If you told me coming into the year that Steph would be averaging 31, 7, and 7, shooting almost 49% from the field and over 41% from three, and that they'd be 3 and 7, I would shit. Like seriously, it's absurd that he's playing so well. And just it's like no one else cares. It's like, well, we won the chip last year, so like we'll be fine.
Guys got paid too.
But in the Western Conference, like you got to start getting going because there's a lot of teams ahead of you right now. And yeah, I know the thing about Golden State is Golden State could rattle off an 8-game win streak from today, and we wouldn't be shocked. But that's why I'm not worried yet. But that being said, like they don't have a great second unit. Like that was kind of their strength last year was the fact that they were able to, maybe Clay's out tonight. Maybe tonight's Draymond's out. Steph might want the night off. And they would still beat teams, and they beat them handily. And I'm looking at some of these guys that they've drafted over the last couple of years, whether it's Wiseman or Moody or Kuminga, and it's like, what the hell did you guys do all summer?
Exactly.
Like, did you go out and improve, or did you get that championship ring and you're like, I made it? And I'm not saying I'm not going to call out their work ethic, but if you want to get minutes with this group moving forward and you want to be the future of Golden State, then you got to start improving now, because if not, they'll be shipping you out of town and trying to get some players back for you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's what I banked on them this season was those young guys developing and taking that next step, because I've been praising the way they drafted and their young guys, Moody, Kuminga, Wiseman and all that, and thinking if they take that next step, that second unit can be just as dangerous as that first unit. And you can not have Steph play 35 minutes tonight. You can have him play 20, 28, 29 minutes and have Moody take over and all that, but has been the case. And Wiseman, listen, they took Wiseman with the second pick, and there was a lot of people saying, questioning, how good, because he didn't play a lot of games at Memphis, right? Only played like 3 games at Memphis, so he not a lot of basketball he's played, and obviously with the injuries so far, and he just hasn't. I thought he was going to have a monster season. I thought he was going to take over that spot, and there's games where you're just like, wait, you have 2 points and no rebounds, and like you're another one who's this big freaky athlete, that a lot of people were saying that you're going to be the next Embiid and all that, and we haven't seen that. And Kuminga, there's some DMPs there, and Moody and all that, and it's just like Poole is shooting, his numbers are way down from last year, and Wiggins and Clay, I thought Clay, his first off season in a while where he's just focusing on basketball, not rehab, but it just hasn't looked good so far. I don't know if it's the these guys thinking because they want a chip that everything's good, everyone's getting paid and all that, but it's just been a tough start. And like I said, out west, you really can't do that. You can't do that. So I just, I don't know if it's the hangover. It's a championship hangover and all that. But I thought these young guys would step up more, and they've just been really inconsistent or below.
Do you guys remember that last KD year in Golden State where they had the issue between KD and Draymond, and then they struggled for a long time because it just felt like collectively they weren't together as a group? Maybe we're seeing that with what happened in the summertime.
Maybe that was bigger than like. I think we got probably most of us thought that if there was a team that can handle a situation like that, it's them, right? They've been through so many battles and all that, 4-time champions, though that core. But maybe that's a bigger issue than we think.
Like because look at Poole's play. He went from being like most improved caliber guy last year, and this was supposed to be the year where he steps up. He's going to be like a 20-point per game guy. He's going to be probably the second option in that offense, and he hasn't played well. He looks kind of disconnected from the group. Now, once again, we're 10 games in, so I don't want to panic too much about it, but
yeah, right.
3-7 losing to Orlando and Charlotte, and like the schedule is not going to get easier, and you have the guys that just aren't playing well together. They don't look like outside of Steph. Steph's the only one that gets a pass on this team because like what more do you want Steph to do? The guy's averaging almost 7 rebounds a game and he has no athleticism. So.
Yeah. Ken, you mentioned how these guys aren't really playing together. Something that I find pretty worrisome is they're playing fast and loose out there. They've got a lot of assists. I think they're top 3 in assists. They're top 3 in assists, but they're leading the league in turnovers. Like they're just out there just dishing it around. They're not taking care of the ball. And when you don't play defense and B, offensively, you just you're not taking care of the ball. Like those are 2 major recipes for disaster. But yeah, it's still early in the season. That is, they got to just start taking care of the ball better. And that already in and of itself is going to limit like transition points. It's going to limit some of those quick buckets from other teams. And that might just kind of help them defensively overall. But yeah, there's still a long season. Steph, there's not much more you can ask him to do at this point.
No.
Everybody else has got to look in the mirror.
Look at both sides of it as well. We mentioned Poole's not playing well, but defensively, isn't this supposed to be Draymond's? It's like Draymond's baby is their defense because he doesn't give you anything offensively. He's meant to be the guy that runs their defense like a defensive coordinator in a way of like he calls out so many rotations. When you watch Draymond on the defensive end, like it's legitimately special to watch. Just he's so good at like switching and making sure guys know where they're going. And yeah, we're talking about one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So it's not just a Jordan Poole issue. It's also is Draymond disconnected because he hasn't got paid yet? Is that part of it?
I think that could be in the back of his head and all. And just
again,
everything that's happened.
So like, we're not going to say that Draymond's tanking their season to try and get paid, but like, you have to start looking at what has Golden State's strength been. It's been, they were great defensively and they hit a ton of threes, and it's tough to beat them when they're doing that. And right now they're still hitting threes, they're distributing, but they're turning it over and they're playing bad defense. So I don't know. It's puzzling to say the least out of the gate.
Oh yeah, it's definitely puzzling, and Wiggins is a great defender. Clay, when he's right, is a tremendous defender. Draymond's obviously a defensive player of the year, and it's just really puzzling what's going on right there. But it's still early, it is early, but we're seeing what we're seeing right now. They turn the ball over and they're playing. That's a recipe. I don't care how good you are. You turn the ball over and you play the worst defense in the league. That is a bad recipe, and we're seeing it because they're losing the teams. They're losing the bad teams. They're losing the bad teams that and every time we watch them, we're like, oh, they'll come back. They'll come back versus Detroit. They'll come back versus Orlando, and it's like, oh, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It doesn't happen. So it's just very puzzling what's going on. Wonder if all the issues they had this offseason is kind of affecting the chemistry right now and all that. But it is early. If they're a team that can figure it out, it is them. It is them. So very interesting. But I want to talk about a team that we thought were going to be god awful this year. Ken, you know what I'm talking about. We're going to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, led by future MVP, Larry Marketer. The Jazz.
I'm actually disappointed that you didn't start with this.
I know I should have. I'm sorry, Laurie.
The day after
Laurie, if you're watching, I'm sorry.
Day, when he goes for 27, 12, and 4 last night in a victory over the LA Lakers, we don't start with that.
Yes, he's been really good. But Utah is 7-3. The Utah Jazz, who we thought they traded Donovan Mitchell, they traded Rudy Gobert for that all those picks that they got from Minnesota, which looks like a steal right now. They have looked really good. They look competitive. They're beating good teams, and we all thought they're in the Wemby sweepstakes. They're going to tank for Wemby. That's why they're doing all this and all that, and they have looked really good so far. It is just really, like I said, Lauri Markkanen has been good. Clarkson's been solid. Sexton, they got some good players. They've always had they had the players even with the trade, but I didn't think any of us thought 7-3 start to the season was on the Utah Jazz. Like again, like you mentioned before, like we thought, Utah. If I told you Utah would be 7-3 after 10, you'd be like, no,
Utah's
maybe
7-3 and Golden State's 3-7.
yeah,
You're
if
like,
we had
"No."
said that, guys,
Come on.
we would be like, get out of here. Maybe 7 wins by the All-Star break. Maybe they got 7 wins by the All-Star break, but not 7 wins throughout the first couple of weeks of the season throughout 10 games. No. So what's happening? Like, why are they playing so good? Like, why are they 7-3 and looking like a team that's maybe we're talking about a playing team? Like, it's not that crazy. And like the way they've been playing so far, like I said, it's early. We're overreacting a little bit, but they played really good so far. 7-3. So what's been the recipe for success so far in Utah?
They're beating you just with bodies. Like, honestly, they run 9 guys pretty consistent minutes. Markkanen, we never questioned Markkanen's talent. We always questioned whether he would play more than half the season. So when he's out there, first of all, he needs to stop shooting threes. Like, he's below 30% from 3, but outside, because he's shooting 54% overall or 51, somewhere around there. And so how he's played has been great. Jordan Clarkson, he just has embraced that 6-man role to the extreme. He's kind of like the modern day, like Jamal Crawford or Lou Williams. Like, he just he loves that. Sexton, we didn't question whether Sexton was good. It was just the fact that, like, if you have a choice between Donovan Mitchell and Colin Sexton, you make that trade. So it was never a matter of Sexton not being good. Let's not forget his last full season. He was like, what, over 20 a game?
24. He was at 24 when he was almost an all-star too.
Like he had a couple games there. Like, I remember those Brooklyn games where, like, he went in and was like dropping like 40 on Brooklyn's head, and you're like, wow, like Sexton's really good. So I don't think it's out of the question to say that they're a play-in team, because, like, I look at the Western Conference right now, and yes, they're the 3 seed. They're not going to be the 3 seed at year end. Let's just get that out of the way. But talking play-in wise, the 2 teams on the outside that I see moving into the play-in is Minnesota and Golden State. And then the 2 teams dropping out is probably Oklahoma City and the Spurs, because neither of them want to win games either. They've just, I don't know what to say about those 2 teams. But then all the teams below them, we're talking Kings, Lakers, and Rockets are the other teams on the outside. What indication is there that any of those teams are going to move up? Maybe the Lakers, just because they have LeBron and AD, but that still hasn't been great. Like, so outside of that, you look at the rest of it, and it's
Westbrook's been decent off the bench.
He's been good off the bench. I'll give him that. Like, just because they lost to Lauri Markkanen on Lauri Markkanen Appreciation Day isn't an indictment on the Lakers. But you look at it, and it's like, it's not out of the question for the Jazz to be the 10 seed in the West.
It really is.
With all these other bad teams, because there is a lot of teams that want Victor Wembanyama. And I know that, like, Utah is probably one of those teams as well, but are they maybe too good to be in that bottom 4? I think that's
at this point. I think at this point they've shown they might be too good to get in that sweepstakes.
They have too many quality pros, is what it is.
Yeah,
like, you look at some of these other teams. The Rockets are stupidly young. The Kings, they have some top end talent, but they're a pretty young team still. OKC's young. Spurs are young. This is a team that they're not that young. Like, who are the young guys on this team? Walker Kessler. Like,
yeah.
So that's where I would bank on Utah more so to be maybe a 10 or 11 than I would any of these other teams that are around there.
Yeah, and like you said, they got players. Like, they're not they're a quote unquote young team. Like, they got Malik Beasley come off the bench. Colin Sexton's come off the bench. You know, like I said, Walker Kessler. They still got Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay's still hanging around the
Can't
league.
believe he's still
You know,
in the league.
I
Jordan
was
Clarkson
surprised.
is. Yeah. You know, Vanderbilt. You know, they got some older players.
Kelly
So
Olynyk, Mike
yeah.
Conley.
So like those guys are all, you know, battle tested and have played in playoff games. So like I think we just assumed because they traded Donovan and they traded Rudy that this is just going to be a dumpster fire of a season and they go. But like I said, it's not a typical. If they had a bunch of young guys like Houston does, or Detroit or Orlando, we would be like, okay, you know, they're probably good. You know, just off youth alone, they're going to struggle because they're so young. But that's not the case. They got guys who know how to play, and Laurie's played tremendous basketball for them. You know, Sexton's embraced the role coming off the bench and all that as he gets healthier and healthier. Clarkson has been solid for them, averaging 18 a game. You know, so they've just been battling. They got some 2 good wins against Memphis back to back. Like, so they've been good and it's been surprising to an extent. Like we all thought maybe they're bottom 3 team. I thought they would be the bottom 3 team out west, but they have their battle. And maybe the front office maybe be like, maybe we should we got to held some guys back, because they're competing, and that's what you like to see if you're a Utah fan, So what are you seeing from them, Craig, that you think why off to this really good start?
I see a team that realizes they have no expectations outside of Utah, like outside of their own locker room. No expectations. Everybody, look at what we're talking about. We're talking about them being a bottom 3, bottom 4 team in the West, and they all come in, and you got guys that are trying to prove something to prove. Lauri Markkanen, you mentioned, he's one that's we talked about his longevity. We know what he's like when he's healthy, but he's not always healthy. And I was just curious. So I was looking up the contract situation. You've got a few guys here that are playing to prove to the rest of the league that they are either worth more money or worth more down the road. Mike Conley has a non-guaranteed contract next year at 35. If he's somebody that the club's like, all right, we're going to cut you, he's showing right now the rest of the league that he can be a solid veteran on a winning team and still be able to go. He had a double-double last night, if I'm not mistaken, 11 and 10, I think it was. You got Malik Beasley's got a club option for next year. Jordan Clarkson has a player option. So if he balls out being 30 years old, there might be a team out there that goes, okay, that's a guy we want on our team. Kelly Olynyk, non-guaranteed contract next year. THT, player option of 11 million. Rudy Gay, player option. A lot of these guys are now they're playing for something to prove. So when you have no expectations and guys that are trying to outperform and play for their next contract, this is what you see.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up, Craig, because that's like the most underrated thing about teams like that, like guys who have something to prove. Like we all think fans are like the Utah's trying to tank and all that, but these players aren't trying to tank. They're trying to prove something. Right, some of these guys want to get that next contract. Like you said, Clarkson has a player option. He, with the way money's going, $14 million is like nothing now. Like he might think he's worth 25. Yeah. That's a 10th guy on a team. Making 14. Like he thinks, and he's probably worth more now, just because of what he does off the bench and all that. So he probably think he can get 20. So guys have something to prove in Utah.
And also teams gave up on them. Let's call it what it is.
You're right.
Cleveland gave up on Lauri Markkanen.
And Sexton, too. They gave up on Sexton, yeah.
So they're like, you know what? That's fine. Like, they see Cleveland and they're like, awesome. But, like, that doesn't mean we can't be good, too. Like, just because you sent us to the great state of Utah doesn't mean that we can't win some basketball games. Like,
yeah. No, you hit. I'm glad you brought that up, Craig, because that's such an underrated thing about when you try to see how this team's going to, the outlook of this team going forward. And that's something that now people thought about. Is like these guys just like they're afterthoughts in a way, but these are still good players. Like they have good players on their team. It's just maybe that the front office may be trying to tank, but these players aren't trying to tank. And they're competing and they've beaten some good teams on their way.
A good year in Utah is the difference between a couple million and hitting double digits in the million category. And that's going to be great to see this year. Some of these guys that want to be in the league long term, like they're going to fight like hell to do so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be terribly surprised if you see maybe end of this month, end of November, if Utah is still in kind of the top 4, top 5 in the standings, I would not be entirely surprised to see guys like Mike Conley, maybe Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk all on the move. They might be trying to get them out so that way they can
More
get
picks,
some
so.
return and still try to tank.
Because Ainge isn't interested in them being the 10. Like, as much as the players want to be in that top 10, Danny's like, nah, I brought you guys in to lose games. Like, you guys can go out and, like, you can go out and average 150 points, but I need you to lose 151 to 150. Like, that's kind of his mentality.
We could put on a show, but we got to be in his
He's got to be thrilled. Like, if you're Danny Ainge, you're like, man, Markkanen, keep balling out because you're not going to be here long term. But, you know,
and you can get valuable assets for Clarkson or Lauri Markkanen or Colin Sexton or a few of the Beasley, Malik Beasley's. Who doesn't want a wing who can come off the bench and give you 20? So they have pieces that you could trade. And we're playing good right now, guys. But you know what? You guys have I'm about to give us more assets and all that. And because I think long term they're probably like, all right, guys, we might have to
calm down. Stop hitting.
There's a 7'4". There's a 7'4" alien that is dribbling and shooting 1 foot threes that we are really interested in, being the face potentially. So
Danny Ainge is about to call you, Chris, saying stop promoting Lauri Markkanen, please. Like, stop having Lauri Markkanen appreciation day.
Yeah. And like what all Lauri's done is boosting his value for whatever team he might be on. Because like I said, I don't see him long.
I mean, all I'm saying, like, Off the Ball Network doesn't have a play in this, but since Lauri Markkanen Appreciation Day, he's averaging 27, 12, and 4. So that's all I'll say about it. Maybe we're the key to his success.
I think that's an MVP right there. He might win MVP. He just might do it.
Just ever since Lauri Markkanen Appreciation Day, the numbers don't lie. Those are the hard stats that we're looking for on this show.
But I want to get into the next thing and teams tanking. And obviously, we heard Wemby blew up the internet yesterday with his play and that 1 foot three. And I've been ever since the Wemby thing 2 years ago, people were like, this guy's gonna make teams like not go in for that play-in spot. Teams that think they may have a shot to get in the play-in. Teams are gonna be hesitant now. And I was like, oh, really? This guy? And then as this season go on, I'm like, oh, okay. The teams that think they have a chance to make the play-in are going to be like, I'd rather have a shot to get him, even though if it might be bleak, than getting the play-in and be an 8 seed possibly and get the 14th pick. So for you guys, and I think this is something we're going to see a lot when the trade deadline, teams that are close in that in that battle for that play-in, I think they might go, they might shift the other direction and be like, hey, got to be in it to get this guy. Even you never know what happens in a lottery. We've seen teams with 2% chances get the number 1 pick and all that, and teams with the best odds get the 3rd, 4th pick and all that. Like, I'm a Knicks fan, so that happens all the time for us. So I know how that feels. So like, are we going to see teams? We're going to Utah, those type of teams that maybe get in that play-in spot, just be like, you know what? We just rather just be in the sweepstakes for Wemby because he's something we haven't seen maybe since LeBron, like as far as the hype and all that, as far as someone that is a true franchise game-changing prospect. I mean, there's LeBron. I mean, Zion had a lot of hype, that year, but LeBron was like, no, this guy is going to change the league. Not just the team, but the league. And LeBron has done that for 20 years. So are we going to see teams just be like, punt on the playoffs, the play-in, which is what the NBA doesn't want. They wanted more teams in it, but this guy's different. This is not unlike any other player we have ever seen in this league.
I think for the last few years, you've kind of seen in the NBA, I'm starting to attribute it more to Major League Baseball in the sense that if you're not one of the few small percentage of teams that has a legitimate chance to win a championship, you're going to start. You don't want to be the middle of the road. Like, you don't want to be in the purgatory that, say, like the Pistons were after their Eastern Conference Finals runs, where they were just good enough to make the playoffs, but they weren't bad enough to get a high lottery pick, and then they're stuck in this purgatory. Teams don't want that. Look at Philadelphia, for example. Tank, got a ton of talent, and now that talent kind of started propelling their franchise forward to at least make a shot at a championship. But I think you're starting to see that more in the NBA, where it's the top teams are getting all this talent to make push for the playoffs. And we have a conversation, and there's maybe, I don't know, 5 teams tops that this year have a legitimate chance at a title, and everybody else is like, look at Antonio, Utah, Portland to an extent. They got rid of McCollum, and they actively tried to get rid of Lillard, but Lillard's like, no, I'm pretty loyal. I want to stay here. And they're like,
damn it.
They're like, damn it.
We really want you to leave, though. I think you're seeing that a lot more in the NBA, because when you have a chance, even like this last year, there was a lot of really good talent that can help propel the long-term stability of your franchise. Look at Paolo in Orlando.
Yeah,
look at now look at Vic coming out of this draft. That's a type of guy that you will do whatever you can to try to get that player on your team, because like you said, he has that potential to change the course, change the direction of your franchise. How many teams have done that? More than probably, if you think about it off the top of your head, there are a lot of teams that have kind of done a similar route where they build their team around the draft. And that's something I know, Chris, you talked about at the top of this show, and you talk about a lot. You have to build your team through the draft to have long-term sustainability.
Exactly.
And that's what you're going to see, I think, more often in the NBA now.
And the key word that you said there is long-term, because you can get the KDs, you can get those guys, but by the time you get them, you're probably getting them on the back nine of their career, or they're starting the back nine of their career. If you build through the draft, you can, like, look at Boston. They played the long game. They played the long game with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart, and it kind of, came together with them going to the finals last year. And, there was a lot of talk of like, oh, you should dump Jaylen Brown. Like, remember when people were saying that at the beginning of last season?
That was literally before the new year.
Of last season, they were saying we should be looking to trade Jaylen Brown because he doesn't fit with Tatum. And then Boston stayed the course. And what does it result in? They go to the finals. So I agree, Craig. I hate these teams that are just so content on consistently being like the 6 to 8 seed in their conference.
New York Knicks.
It's one of the big reasons why up here in Canada, the Raptors have always driven me nuts, because they went for it one year. And what did it result in? A championship. And people were mad that DeMar DeRozan got traded. And it's like, why are you content on never winning a championship? I would rather the Kawhi thing doesn't work out, but we went for it. And I think we're going to see teams that, for a guy like Victor, they're going to be like, we're going for it. Like, we will give you any player that you want and just give us a second round pick, because we don't want to win basketball games this year. We do not want to win more than 25 games. Like, there's a lot of teams that are probably like, hey, if we go like 18-64, I'm not upset.
Think about this a little bit. The teams that are the top teams that we consider the top teams in the NBA: Golden State on paper, Milwaukee, Boston. What do those teams all have in common? They drafted most of the talent as their core. Now look at the bottom teams: Brooklyn, Philadelphia now. I'm sorry, New York.
It's okay, you could say that.
Like New York, look at these teams that are having so much dysfunction. The Lakers, what are they not doing? building through the draft. They're just trying to go
They
and
don't
free
have
agents.
any draft picks at all.
Exactly.
The
They don't
Lakers
use
are
the draft well.
screwed. I just like.
Now, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. The difference between the Lakers and all those teams is they won a championship
won
at the end of the
championship.
day. But
But long
now
term, yeah.
we are seeing the
long-term
repercussions
effects.
of, yes, it's great that you went for it. It's great you won that title for AD. But now, wow, it's bad. You can't fix it because no one wants the contracts. No one wants guys that are either too old in LeBron or never play in AD, or we don't know what to call Russell Westbrook anymore. A sixth man off the bench. And now we're seeing the repercussions of all those draft picks being gone. Because how do you make your team better? You just go out and constantly sign mid-tier, lower-tier veterans.
Never works.
Think that it's gonna. You think that it's gonna come together. It's not. It's just not gonna come together when you're relying on Lonnie Walker to be a starter. You're relying on Matt Ryan, not the quarterback, to play minutes.
Oh man, you don't want that Matt Ryan anyway. But
I mean, like, we somehow have the better Matt Ryan. That's another discussion for another show.
Hey, he had a big three. That was a big
better Matt Ryan this year.
That was a big three he hit against New Orleans. But you guys are right. Like building through the, I harp on that all the time. I get so mad with the, like, for the Knicks, for instance. Like, yeah, we got some good young players, but the fact that we missed on, you know, then the Kevin Knox draft and Frank Ntilikina and a lot of these drafts throughout the years is why we have to, you know, patch it up. You know, we got to patch it up with a Jalen Brunson, patch it up with a Julius Randle. And that hurts you long term. It hurts you long term when you miss on top 10 picks. That comes back to bite you. And waiting for this guy to pop, waiting for that guy to pop. And now
your scouting should be the highest paid department in your franchise.
I've been saying that, like, if I'm a owner of a basketball team, the money that I don't care, you know, facility. Okay, cool. We want the facilities for our players to have top. Okay, that's cool. But the top priority, I need the best scouts and the best GM in the world, because now it's a world. It's not just like, I don't need the best scouts in college. I don't need
a guy that's going to go and sit there and watch Rutgers versus Nebraska.
I don't care about that.
Night.
I need you to go out. You need to be going to Australia. You need to be going to Spain. You need to go. I need the best scouts. I need the best of the best, because I need you to find me talent. I need you to find me that guy, that Giannis. Like the Milwaukee Bucks said, okay, he's super raw, but man, guys, there's something about him. We should take a chance on him with a top 15
If
pick.
he has the work ethic and we put the time in with him, with our training staff, with
player development
in the organization, this guy, because look at Giannis when he came into the league, just a scrawny kid from Greece that no one really, they saw the athletic tools of, like, oh, he's long and he's very raw, but the body is there for him that he could become something. And their scouts found him, and they took a mid first round pick on some no-name guy from Greece that everyone probably thought, what the hell are we doing in Milwaukee? And now he's the best player in the world and has been for a couple of years.
Exactly. And he wasn't playing against like a bunch of, he was playing against us. You know, he was playing against guys with 9-to-5 jobs, and they said, you know what, you guys want to be pro basketball players? Yeah, okay. That's who he's playing against. You know, YMCA guys, like, and it's real, because I remember talking to Matt Babcock, whose dad was a big time assistant in Milwaukee Bucks. That's what happened. He's like, this little scrawny, but you know what? We trust our player development that, you know what, we could get him right. And that's the thing. If you're all your money should be invested into player development and good scouts.
Yeah,
because then you don't have to worry about, we only can draft good if we have the number 1 pick and all that. You can draft anyone.
That's why the Warriors did it. Have been consistently good.
Raptors, another team.
Like, they went and drafted a guy in Scotty Barnes, where everyone in the draft process said, you know what, he's not great offensively. He's a good defensive guy. He's probably like the 5th or 6th guy in this draft. And everyone was saying Jalen Suggs to the Raptors, Jalen Suggs to the Raptors. Yeah. But their scouting department said, you know what, the tools are there and we can develop this guy. And he has the better body, the better everything to long term for this team. And they take the chance, and everyone gets pissed on draft night, and then Scotty plays 10 games and they're like, oh shit. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I get it now.
He just goes to the right team because they know how to develop their talent, and
But
that
these
just
are
seems
teams
like
that don't miss on draft picks.
no matter
That's why
where they're picking to.
consistently good teams, because they have good scouting departments. They have good player development. They're not worried about how raw is this prospect. They're like, oh, we can mold him in what he becomes. And
Exactly.
franchises sometimes I think are just too scared to take that chance. I think they see the
Mhm.
guy that they should take. Oh, well,
Yeah.
you should take Obi Toppin because he was National Player of the Year.
Halliburton.
But was that the fit? Was that the fit that they needed? No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't
And
again. No, it wasn't
not to drag the Knicks through the mud here on this.
No,
one,
but I say this on the Twitter. I'm like, it should have been Halliburton. Oh, you're just saying it. No. If you ever watched any of my shows, I'm like, Halliburton should have been a point guard. Should have been a point guard. Should have been a point guard. Because then you don't have to worry about giving Jalen Brunson $100 million. Because that's what you have, Halliburton at the point guard position. That's what I'm saying. It's stuff like that that comes back to bite you in the ass. And this is what a lot of teams go through, and that's why the Knicks right now are, we're Knicks Twitter's going
Just
crazy
think about
to
how
win
that
38 games. To win
That one
38 to
draft
40
pick changes
games.
everything for the Knicks because their biggest
Exactly.
weakness was that they didn't have a good point guard. And they could have. If they drafted Halliburton, we'd be talking about Halliburton, RJ, Barrett.
Oh, go before that. Kevin Knox,
Randall.
like they took the wrong Kentucky guy. I was like SGA, and they
But
take
when you
Kevin Knox.
consistently miss on those guys,
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
so
Yeah.
tough.
And that's why the same teams,
They
the
wouldn't have
Kings,
to pay Jalen Brunson $25 million a year if they just had the right
And-
scouting.
and they wouldn't have to get Julius Randle and pay him. And that's why the same the Pistons, the Magic. This is why the same teams are in the lottery the Kings are in the lottery every single year because they
And
make
they're
the
missing
same
every
mistakes. And you miss, and it comes back to haunt you every time when you miss and you miss and you miss. And now we're gonna see teams like they're gonna go long. You have to play the long term game. Drafting is the key. That's how you get better. That's how you win champion. Look at Golden State. We've seen this is how. And then if you want to make that big move like Toronto did, when you hit draft picks right and you can make that move, you do it. But we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see a lot of teams being like, okay, we're gonna play a long term game. But we're gonna put our it's the lottery. You got to be in it to win it. And this guy is different. This guy is
Nothing
different.
makes me angrier than when teams give up first round picks. Nothing
I hate
makes
when
me
people say
angrier.
those picks, just trade the picks. That guy could
it's
be
fine. It would have only been the 25th or 30th pick. It's like good players get drafted in that range, and if you have good scouting, you could find that player.
Exactly.
So don't tell me that giving up 3 firsts to get a guy that doesn't win us a championship makes sense.
And the thing about first round draft picks that a lot of people don't think about, second round draft picks, you can essentially they're essentially non-guaranteed contracts at the end of the day. First round draft picks, you have team control for multiple years. And that's huge, especially if you find a guy like Giannis who in the middle of that draft, or even take somebody who was at the very, very end of the first round draft.
Jimmy Butler was the 30th pick. Like, imagine, he's a 30th pick in the draft.
But that team could have just said, you know what, it's the 30th pick. It doesn't matter. So we're just
that's the mind. That's a lot of the mindset that a lot of fans have. They don't get like, oh, it's the 30th pick. It's not going to mean anything. Well, imagine if Chicago had thought that, and guess what? They wouldn't have Jimmy Butler. There's a lot of play, and with the talent the talent that's in the league now, and the talent that's coming in, second round picks are just as valuable. Just a few years ago, second round picks were like, you throw them in and like, whatever, who cares about second round? Second round picks now, you're getting starters with second. That wasn't happening in the league just a few years ago. Second round picks are valuable with the G League now. And now you can get with two-way all these, you can get starters in the second round. You're getting good players in the second round now, where that used to be like maybe you get one good guy in the second round. Everyone else is just you're getting good players. So like the fact that you're like, who cares? It's gonna be the 30th pick in 5 years. You don't know, first of all, you don't know that. You don't know that because things just change in the league. So I hate when people just say, "Well, the picks don't matter," and no. And I'm a pick hoarder. I love when teams get picks and all that because that's so valuable. You just don't know, and like with the Knicks, I remember
the Brooklyn
Donovan
Nets
Mitchell
handed
stuff,
Boston.
Yeah, they handed them.
They handed them their championship caliber team.
No.
with
And who would
that
have thought that? They
because
they
they
said the
went
same
for
thing.
it
They didn't
and
care.
they said, you know what, we need Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett for whatever
Exactly.
reason.
I
And
hate
they
that
gave up
mindset.
picks so far down the road that, oh, we're bad now. Now we don't have our pick. Look at the Lakers right now. The Lakers with the Pelicans. Are you kidding me? The Pelicans are looking at the Lakers right now like, man, I hope you continue to absolutely stink. Can you imagine if they get Victor?
And not even with their pick, it would be the Lakers pick.
And that's what I mean. Like,
so they could be in the playoffs, a top 5 seed, and still have a chance to get Victor. That's a beautiful thing.
Let's say they don't even get Victor. Let's say they fall at number 2. You can go get Scoot Henderson.
Scoot Henderson or
Scoot
the Thompson twins, like
CJ, Brandon Ingram, and Zion, because you went for it. And once again, they went for it and they won a title. So
So
we look a few years down the road and we consider it like a debacle, like the Lakers didn't win a title, but like a lot of teams don't. There's only one team that can win it every year. And if you don't get that title going all in like that, like a Brooklyn did, then you can be an absolute train wreck for half a decade to a decade down the road.
And if with the Lakers, they did win a championship, so I don't think the Heat should be as bad as with Brooklyn, because Brooklyn hasn't even gotten to an Eastern Conference Finals, let alone a championship win. So I
agree. The hard part about that is that I like to think of there are levels to fan bases, and you may agree with. I think you may agree with this, Chris. You got the Lakers and the Knicks are kind of at the very top, where your expectations are title or bust every year.
And they don't care what your roster is. They don't care what your roster is.
And the media is big on that too, because the media just obviously New York and LA media are
two of the biggest cities.
They're going to talk about them every single morning, every single game, beating it to death of why does this team suck, or why is
the hard
part? And it's crazy, like just to go off the Knicks, like we were 3-1 and we beat bad teams, and the world was beautiful, sunshine, rainbows, everything was good. They lose a couple games and the world is falling apart. But that's how the media, that's how New York, LA media works. It's just like with the Lakers, like you guys won a championship a few years ago. I don't care if it was in the bubble and all that. Everyone had the same parameters. Every team had the same parameters. So everyone had the same rules and all that. They won a championship. And they're talking as if there are, 60 losses and all that. But it's just crazy how those markets just every day it's something new. They always pick apart, those teams.
I think the hardest part about being in those fan bases is you're almost pressured all the time to sell out, like the Lakers did for one title, but you're sacrificing your entire future.
100%.
And unfortunately for like the Knicks, think back years like after, like in the early 2000s, how many times they try to sell out to go get big free agents and go get trades and stuff, and it just didn't work. But when you keep trying to salvage your future to try to win this year instead of build long-term and have patience to the draft, you see what's happening, unfortunately, in New York. And I would love to see the Knicks back in like Eastern Conference Finals. It's good for the NBA. It's good just in general for basketball to have one of your biggest markets do well. And it's unfortunate though that they just made the moves they've made. And I think the Lakers, if they're not careful, are going to kind of fall into that same habit.
100%. And that's backfired on the Knicks. Just try to make these trades and the pressure of listening to the fan base, which is the worst thing you can do if you listen to the fan base, you're in trouble. And if there's times where if the Knicks listen to Knicks Twitter, I mean, we would have Jericho Sims starting, Grimes and Obi Toppin starting at the 3, and it's like there's sometimes you don't listen to the fan, and I feel like they have listened to the fans too much, and they just made constant bad decisions, and that's why you're at where you're
the good franchises are the ones that don't listen to the fans. Go back to the Scotty Barnes point of everyone's clamoring for Jalen Suggs.
Exactly.
And you say, I don't care what the fan base wants. I trust my scouting department. I trust what I'm seeing on the film. We're going to take this guy out of Florida State that people aren't very high on offensively, and it's going to work.
Yep.
Those are the franchises that have the success. The ones that don't
and
care.
You have to take those chances sometimes, because some people would be like, oh, that was a chance taken on Scotty because the offense might not, but they're like, well, yeah, the offense is a work in progress. But guess what? We can fix him up. We know what to do. Like we have a track record with wings, big wings, that have had success. Look at Pascal. Nobody thought Pascal would be what
An
he
OG.
is. OG, OG and all that. Like they have the guys to do it. The development, player development to do it. So they took a chance, and it's worked wonders for them. So like, you have to take those chances. You can't just keep harping on what the media says, and that's why a lot of those teams are where they're at. They're constantly in the lottery. But this year, we're going to see a lot of those teams. If Detroit, they should just be like, all right, this is a wrap. The season's over. That big 7-foot guy, we're going to have him potentially with Cade, and boom, we could turn it around like that. I think he's that good of a player where he can change the course of a franchise. And he's just that special. I also hate, and we can, and I'll have wax one more thing, and then we can sign off. I appreciate you guys joining me on the show. I hate when people like try to be like, you know what? He's not that impressive. I think Scoot's better and all that. Like they try to be different because everyone's on the Wemby. It's like, no, it's okay to say that Wemby, Craig, the Detroit Pistons have the #1 pick. They're not going to be cute and be like, well, I think Scoot's going to be better in 10 years. So let's take Scoot. No, you get fired. You take him. And if Wemby is a bust, I live with that. You can't. Even if you think Scoot's a better all-around player right now, there's no chance in hell you're passing up Wemby. So I hate when people say, well, Scoot's a better player. He should be the #1 pick because he's no, stop being stupid.
Everyone wants to be Ja Morant to Zion.
Yes, and first of all, nobody was saying John. Everyone was like Zion, and it's just business too. Or maybe, but no, I'm not saying play. But as far as taking him with the #1 pick, as far as a business, I'm like pure business. You had to take Zion #1 because he was bringing in so much money and all that. And the same thing was gonna be with Vic. As far as just pure business, maybe John Morant was better. Pelicans wise, they had to take Zion because you saw the numbers business wise. Like he was selling instant. Ja eventually would have been that, but at the moment, Ja wasn't that box office guy. It's the same thing with Vic.
Strictly a franchise business.
Yes, it was a money, and you see like their money wise, Zion was box office for them. Even though Ja's a better player right now, but I'm just saying pure business wise, there's not a chance in hell you're going to take Scoot over Victor because Vic's going to bring you, like they're already talking about the valuations of teams are going to go up $400 million off this one guy who hasn't even played in the league yet. Like you can't pass up on him. That's great. Unless he has like a catastrophic, injury or whatever. You can't
imagine what the Cavs would have done in 2003
if they took Melo or something.
If they took Melo over Braun.
It's another situation. Yeah, it's very similar.
First of all, people would probably give up their season seats for a move like that. That's how angry moves like that would be.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, you live with it. As Chris said, you live with the fact that if Victor's a bust, at least you sold a couple thousand more season seats for those few years.
Yep. It's like Greg Oden and KD. Same thing. Greg Oden was like, he was highly touted, and like KD it definitely was the better player all around, but like Oden was the guy. Like I'm sure business for Portland when they drafted him was through the roof, but you have to take that chance. Like it's easy to say KD, oh, you should have took KD, but like at the time it's like we can't pass up on Greg Oden. Like you can't do that. Like it just doesn't make business sense. And I think
you were
that's
a couple years removed from watching Shaq dominate the league for like half a decade. You had to take a Greg Oden when they're saying he could be the next Shaq.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're gonna see a lot of teams, just be like, 10th seed, 8th seed. That's cool. They get us a few extra dollars, playoff tickets. But if we're not gonna be a champion, like why not just punt and get this generational talent and have a chance in 3 to 4 years to a championship rather than be the.
And just because you don't get Victor, just because you don't get Scoot. There's other guys in this.
And there's other guys in this class that are really, really good that you can get that can help you. So I think we're going to see a lot of that going on. But one last thing before I let you guys go, just give me your biggest surprise, whether it's player, team wise, so far in the league, and good and disappointment so far.
Greg, you go.
I would say, man, biggest biggest disappointment on paper, I don't think a lot of us are kind of really surprised at how it all fell apart, but I think Brooklyn's probably a really big disappointment. Just because of everything going on paper. You're hoping that Ben Simmons comes back and plays, kind of to his potential, but I don't know what's going on with him. He's not the player that
He's
he's not
lost
the
it.
player. He's
He's
lost
lost
it.
it.
He's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
there. He got his payday, and I think he's done. He doesn't care anymore. He's not caring about making his game better. He's there. He's existing.
Yeah, he's just a guy.
He's just a guy now. My surprise on the positive end has to be Cleveland. And I know Utah and Portland can probably be thrown in that mix, but I would say Cleveland just because how well they've been playing so early in this season. And we kind of already touched on all that. So
Ken?
On the negative side, I'm gonna throw the Heat in there as a team that we didn't
they've
talk
been bad.
about.
Yeah.
I hate saying that like Pat Riley screwed up because that's just like it just feels so stupid to say with all the success that he's had for decades. But the Duncan Robinson contract, now you've got he's not even playing, is he? Like
He played last game, but he's kind of been sporadic with his minutes, Duncan Robinson. Depends on depends on the matchup of pretty much who they're playing.
Yeah, like so Duncan Robinson's contract. I like that they paid Hero. I think he's kind of the guy
that was a
moving
good
forward. Hero and Bam is their future, but Bam has been hot and cold to start the year. Jimmy, I hate saying it as well because I love Jimmy come playoff time, but I feel like he just doesn't care in the regular season, and he'll show up though in the playoffs. He'll give you a couple like 40-point playoff games, but
Yeah.
he hasn't been great. So I think the Heat being 4-6, you have to consider that a major disappointment considering weren't they the 1 seed last year in the East or 2? Like they were one of the top.
They're one of the top seeds. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we have to have them there. As far as I'm kind of surprised, honestly, by the Pelicans in a way. Not that they're good, but like they missed Zion for a number of games and it didn't matter. Like this is how well they've done. Like they pounced on CJ McCollum when Portland sold low on him because they sold low on CJ.
Super low, yeah. That's a steal. A steal.
So they took their chance with that. They added Valanciunas, who's probably like we're talking about underappreciated guys. He is
massively.
He in the playoffs last year had a couple games where it was like 30 and 18. And you're like, what?
Yeah. 20 games, yeah.
So Valanciunas and Ingram, obviously, I know that you're high on Ingram, Chris, and I obviously am as well this year. And the fact that they're 5-3, they have some quality wins there. If Zion stays healthy, like I don't think it's out of the question to say that the Pelicans could come out of the West this year. I don't think it will happen because I don't think there's enough playoff experience there between Ingram and Zion to do it. But man, this is a franchise that did it right, and they traded for guys when they were at their lowest, and they put them in positions to succeed. And it's nice to see the Pelicans finally competing once again. Because those AD years, we talked about it earlier in the show. They were in that purgatory of constantly being
an 8 seed
7 to 9, which is the worst spot to be. And then everyone would say, "Oh well, AD like he can't win a title," and it's like, how are you winning the title from the 7-8 seed?
Yeah, he can't carry that.
It's never
team.
been done. So can we stop with he should be winning a title with the Pelicans because
exactly
it was him and Drew Holiday.
Yeah,
that was their team.
Exactly.
So,
that wasn't. Yeah, they weren't doing work. But yeah, I think I'm very high on the Pelicans this year. So I think good things. I think they can sneak up because they drafted really well, and they made some trades.
Herb Jones. I didn't even mention him.
Yeah, they have so much talent. Zion healthy is obviously the key, but they have some good a lot of good pieces there. Surprise for me in a good way. Would be the Suns. I know they have the talent, but I kind of felt like a lot of the friction that happened in the off season will kind of hurt them in a way, but they're playing, they're playing really good basketball right now, and they're figuring it out. That's even with Ayton missing games. Booker's
But I
really
thought Chris Paul was washed because he played 2 bad games to start the season.
he's people just want
The
him to be
ultimate
bad so bad.
overreaction of 2 games in, a guy struggles, and then is Chris Paul done?
But they never bring up like the 3 games he had with like 30 assists and like 1 turnover. They won't. But the minute he has a bad shooting game,
he only scored 6 points. Oh, Chris Paul's no good.
Yep. Okay. But he had 10 assists with no turnovers. It was like that's been his game his whole career. But like it's crazy and all that.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Yeah,
that was so
yeah.
irritating to me.
That
that.
Yeah, and surprise, bad wise, I would say honestly, I wouldn't say it's bad, but like I'm kind of disappointed with the Clippers and the Kawhi stuff. I thought he would be ready to go, give them full. But that situation, I mean, I had the Clippers going all the way and winning it all, and based on Kawhi, I'm like, oh, he's ready to go. He didn't play last year, so
he has to be good now.
I mean, he has to be like he doesn't have to
sit as much as he does. You got to.
I mean, that's what I say. You set the whole year, like, and you've done this plenty of times, and you take care of your you kind of take a lot more time than you should. And I thought he'd be ready to go, and I think they've been playing better of late the last few games, but disappointed.
The amount of injuries that he has, Kawhi might load manage in the playoffs. Honestly,
that's just yeah. It's
if they don't have a couple days off, they might be like, you know what, we got to sit Kawhi for game 2. I know we're losing for like his knee hurt.
Yeah, and that's
how crazy this load management is with Kawhi now.
He'll
play half the playoff series.
Yeah, and he's kind of gotten a pass because he's such a quiet. He's not even on social media, so like he doesn't. You can't even.
He's a multi-time champion, is why
you can't even at him on social media because he doesn't have a Twitter or it's just to be mad for him to be mad and like. But it's time for like people to be like, hey, yo, like, what's up? Like, you should be playing, man. Like, play. Like, you have a chance to win a championship. We need you to play, bro. Like, so disappointed in him more say than the Clippers. I think the Clippers can figure it out even without him. They'll be solid, not a championship team maybe, but this disappointed.
John Wall's been nice.
John Wall's been solid. PG is starting to look like PG again. He kind of struggled bringing in the season, but he's had some really explosive games and he's looking like him old self again. So I think that they'll figure it out, but the Kawhi stuff is that's disappointing because I felt like he should be playing, like, and he's out like the next 4 games. So
2 games he's played this year.
2 games he's played 2 games, and he's out like the next 3 games. Like,
yeah, and what idiot in the Off the Ball Network fantasy league would go and pick Kawhi Leonard? I wouldn't do that. But wait, I did.
I mean, yeah, I think I hate to stop picking the Clippers to win a championship.
It's not even the fact that he's playing too. It's that he's not even starting. He's just coming in off the bench.
But that was crazy. Him coming off the bench was like, what? What's going on here? Why is he come off the bench and playing 50? Like,
his comment was, "Oh, I waited so long to play. What's an extra 10 minutes or whatever?" He said. And I was like,
really?
Okay, for 1 game maybe, but the fact that you've only played 2 games and they've out of your first 9,
yeah. He's
at what point, if you're the Clippers, at what point do you go, man, your BS is not worth it?
He's low key, like, I know he's quiet and all that, but you have to be frustrated with, like, if you're an organization, like, you have to be frustrated with him because you brought, like, it's kind of like the Nets. It's not as bad as the Nets, obviously, but like you brought these 2 guys to win a champ, and you had some good young pieces, right? It's kind of like the Nets. They had SGA, they had a good young core going. And they sacrificed it to get these 2 guys, and Kawhi kind of politicked to get PG, and PG left the Thunder after just signing a new deal. Like, so it's like it hasn't worked, guys. You guys haven't done anything either. You guys got to the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, but that's it. Like,
and here's kind of what I think is gotta hurt the most if you're not only ownership but fans of the Clippers. They still have Kawhi on the books for 2 more years and a player option for $48 million in 24. You're literally paying him $40 to $50 million a year to just be like, nah, my knee's sore today. I can't play.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be so frustrating as an ownership and a fan base to go, we're paying you $40 million a year. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. he tends to get a pass because what he did with Toronto, especially Toronto, that Toronto championship bought him like 5 years. That bought him. It's like Doc Rivers is still living off '08.
Load managed that year.
He's still yeah.
Yeah,
and
we'll
I
give him
know
a special playoff run, but he also only played like 60 games.
yeah.
It's ever since that news came out when he was in San Antonio, and they're like, well, the team doctors say that he's good, but his personal people say they're not good. And like, you've got these conflicting things. So now it was this whole PR thing where
it was a disaster.
Are the Spurs not looking out for the best interest of the player? Ever since then, I think he's been riding that. Ever since.
I know my body better than the doctors know my body.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And even though they're trained professionals.
Get out there and play for 15 minutes. Like,
play basketball, man. And that's been, and I think in the CBA, that's going to be a big thing. Like, hey, this isn't, we can't have this no more. Like, if you're healthy, if our doctors say you're healthy and you look, you're playing. Or else, guess what? You're not playing. You don't want to play. Well, guess what? You're not going to get paid. It's that simple.
Do you think at some point the Clippers, if he keeps saying that he's not healthy, do they at some point kind of pull a Kyrie situation where they suspend him without pay just to be like, okay, you don't want to play, you aren't good, you're suspended without pay because it's conduct detrimental to the team?
I'll be honest. I'll be honest though. I don't think that the Clippers have the backbone to do it.
No, unless he goes on a Kyrie rant, then yeah.
In the first place, they gave him control of like everything.
They sold their soul. They sold their soul.
They were like, oh, well, Kawhi, what do you want? Well, I'm not coming unless I bring Paul George. So you better create that space for me.
You better trade every single asset you have and get me Paul George.
You have to give up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
who they did not want to give up. Like Doc did not want to give up
for us. Okay. We'll do it.
That's what happens when you
now I don't want to play. Okay, you don't have to play. Like when you enable people, they're just give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and that's what has happened here.
And because he's quiet and he doesn't talk and all that, he gets a pass. And like what Mo complains about a lot, it's true though. Like if this was LeBron, we're killing LeBron. Yeah, but guess what? LeBron plays. Yeah.
That's LeBron why KD gets killed. It's why Kyrie gets killed. Not that they don't deserve to be killed for it, but why does Steph never get any flack? Steph doesn't talk. Why does Lillard get flack? Because he's talking about loyalty every 2 seconds. That's why they don't get the pass. It's the here's the thing. We're in the player empowerment age only when we like what they're saying. When we like what they're saying, it's like, oh, awesome. Like I love that my guy speaks out. The second they have anything that's controversial or that people don't agree with, suddenly it's, well, stop talking. Go out there and play. Why is this guy talking? Just go out and score 30.
No, but that's exactly what happened to Kawhi. He's quiet, so people don't say nothing. But it's like, wait a minute, bro, you're not playing, and you've demanded this guy come here, and you guys haven't even done anything. You blew a 3-1 lead in the bubble and all that. You didn't play great in that bubble series, against Denver and all that. And it's like you're getting a massive pass for winning a championship in Toronto. Like that's been holding weight for way too long. That one championship,
a lot of years ago.
It's getting up there where it's been a while. Like that was, so it's like, and people could be, well, you guys 0-1 because KD got hurt and listen, you need breaks to win championships, but like
Toronto's got to be thankful that that Kawhi opted out and said, I'm not staying.
Yeah, I think that was, I know a lot of fans are probably like,
restaurants in Toronto were going to offer him free food to stay here.
They put him on the Mount Rushmore of Toronto Raptors.
How irritating that would be? Kawhi hasn't suited up for 400 days, but he's in there for lunch every day. Like you're just losing so much money off of this guy that my knee hurts.
My knee hurts, guys. So he's getting way too much pass. That's very disappointing. Because that was basis of why I thought the Clippers would win it, because I thought he'd be ready to go, and he probably is ready to go, but they've said this, that even in San Antonio beginning, he was always very careful of his body and all that. So it's not just a Clippers thing or a Toronto thing. It's been that way since he's been drafted. So I hope he gets to play, because it's the NBA is better when he's on the court, and and it helps my finals pick because my finals picks aren't even in the playoffs. I think so. I need that. I need them to get better so my picks look a little bit better and all that. But we'll see what happens. But guys, I appreciate you guys joining me for this episode. This was a lot of fun. You know, it didn't even feel like almost 2 hours, but we got a lot. We talked about a lot on both East Coast West Coast teams. So I appreciate you guys, chopping up with me. So before we sign off, guys, just let the people know where they can find you and any projects you got going up. Craig, you go first.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at CJCampbell30. Also kind of working on a project here with Off the Ball Network, driven by Detroit podcast. That'll be coming out here fairly soon. Work willing. But yeah, I'm also on the All Sports All Plays Network Monday through Friday on the morning show from 10 a.m. to noon on all social media platforms.
Awesome. Kenny?
Competitive Hedge podcast Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Probably going to be pushing to 7 a.m. Eastern time because while you guys are changing your clocks pretty soon, we don't change them where I am at. So we're like one of few places in the world that doesn't have to change their clocks. The rest of Canada does. It's just us that doesn't. So I guess that would mean 7 a.m. Eastern time moving forward. So a little bit earlier for folks on the East Coast, but still good old 6 a.m. my time. And Chris, I appreciate you having me on. Craig, awesome chatting it up with you once again. As you said, it didn't feel like 2 hours, and I guess we'll cap it off with.
That could go a lot of ways where you just did. That can go a lot of ways. What you just did. If people just see that part, they're gonna be like, "What's going on?
What the hell is going on over there?
What the hell did Ken just do? Oh God, DM's gonna get hit. Like, what happened? Are you okay?
You need to release this guy.
We're gonna have to release him. We're gonna send you to waivers, Ken. Yeah, you can follow me at Off the Ball Pod on Twitter. It's our most active. You can follow the network, Off the Ball Network, at OTB_network on Twitter. Go to offtheballnetwork.com. I appreciate anyone who chimed into the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Appreciate anyone. Appreciate the guys who chimed in for a half a minute because their Wi-Fi, they got the McDonald's Wi-Fi. We got to get you boys down south some better Wi-Fi, but appreciate you guys chiming in just for a few and all that. But on that note, be well, be safe, take care.